What is up, everybody? This is sort of a JP PSA. Kind of wanted to run through a couple of things today. I was down in Salt Lake Valley and in Utah Valley today. I had to run down and do some errands, and I was taking a look as I drove down the streets at a lot of the commercial properties and the turf that I was seeing, and I gotta be honest with you, it was mostly garbage. The beauty in this statement is that I know to all the customers I sell to down there, nobody does commercial, so it's none of that, which is great. But, you know, I was thinking through a lot of the things that have been happening here in this state this year, and there's really only a couple of turf suppliers locally, and they're pretty much pushing out the same thing. And I think that a lot of people got a little bit, I'm not going to say screwed, but their results definitely are lackluster. So adapting to the weather and playing with it, playing well with it, is super important in your fertility program. Now, looking at my lawn behind me, it's dark green. It is doing very, very well. Considering everything that I've gone through, it's June 11th today. It's June 11th. I burned this thing down 7 weeks ago is when I burned everything out. It remained cold. It has had one heavy feeding of 20 plus a little air raid every now and again, plus some d-Thatch. Everything that I've done is in video, and you can go right back through the list and take a look at every single app that I've done this year. But in total, I'm at 27 ounces of 1801 so far. Now, my season started really late. I put a tiny bit out right after I burned the thing, just to give a little bit of energy. And then I was working at just sort of keeping the soil warm, which is why I was running d-Thatch. I wanted higher microbial activity, so that's really what I was going for. And now looking around, without a doubt, anywhere around me and down in some of these other areas in the valley, I have got the greenest grass around. So right now it's running about 2/3 pound of N per 1,000 is all I'm at right now. I am going to do an application on Friday, this coming Friday, and when that happens, it'll end up being just over a pound for the season, and we're coming up on the first day of summer. Now, I have been cutting this grass down at 1 inch, and I'm no longer going to do that. I'm going to let it grow up. I'm headed to Florida in 5 days, and I'll be gone for a week. So I want to let it just grow. So I'm not actually going to mow it again. I'm going to let it get tall while I'm gone, and then come back and see what we're looking like. I think that's going to be pretty nice to get a good look at that. So irrigation is on. I'm going to post a little video about that. Well, it's not little, it takes a little while to get through it. So that one's fairly long, but just doing a repair and getting everything set up behind me so that it can run while I'm gone. That's going to be happening in the next couple days. So, you know, it's been 6 weeks since I put FERT out, and we're holding strong. And it has to do with how I stepped things up and led into the season to work with nature and work with the water that we were getting, to be honest with you, using the aerate to help get more penetration down into the soil, using the d-Thatch to help keep things warm, really being able to utilize that nitrogen and let it just cruise and cruise. And I really wonder how long I could go, but I'm just going to feed it on a schedule. So what that brings me to is slow release nitrogen versus standard release nitrogen, the different forms of those, you know, what people are using out there, and truly what they're doing, because I think that requires a little bit of explanation. Now, you know, we have liquids that are tied to carbon, and that carbon slows down the release, and then we use a couple of other methods to slow it down even further. So in certain states, there's requirements that we have at least 50% of the nitrogen is slow release or controlled release or delayed release. So we do that, and we do that on most of our items that we make, with the exception of like 501 Pro Turf that we sell to golf. There's no controlled release in that one. But everything else, we have a component that actually slows down the release at the end to give you an extended feeding out of the liquid. So this can keep running because temps have been cool and nitrogen's been stable and moisture has been going really, really well. So I haven't really had to do much watering. I think I've turned the sprinklers on like 4 times total, and it was just during certain times to just give it a little bit of a wet down on one of the warm days when I could see that there was a little bit of dryness happening, and then otherwise have been relying on rainfall. So let's just talk about some of these controlled release products and what they are. I think it's really important. So sulfur-coated urea. Sulfur-coated urea has been around for a long time. It was a staple at Lesco years and years ago, before John Deere Landscapes. It was one of their claim to fame. It took a while for the sulfur that was coated on the outside of the urea to break down, and then once it did, then you would start to get a urea feeding that would start to sort of come afterwards. So that could take 60 days to 90 days, depending on how long that shell took to break. And then we got into polymer-coated urea. And polymer-coated urea is a little different because it is the short-chain polymer that's a plastic that actually respirates. So moisture breaks it down. It allows water to go back and forth through a membrane, and so it can pull nitrogen back out. Well, now that's all well and good, but it really depends on what's happening in the environment around it. So there are some companies that claim 120 days. There may even be 180 now. I'm pretty sure there's one out there called Duration that does 180. But when you go into areas where there is a lot of humidity, a lot of heat units, fluctuations going back and forth, good luck, because that membrane is constantly flexing, open and closing, and the nitrogen that's inside is going to get kicked out. So that just happens. So for most of the time with the polycoat, you know, we can see some of these like empty shells laying around, and people think, oh look, the fertilizer's still there. Now that will just break down into carbon dioxide and water. That's what polymers break down into. So they're very natural. There's not really a big deal. But the nitrogen can be out of it long before that membrane is gone. So that's something to think about. All you're doing is really delaying release. So however much time it takes for water to penetrate that shell and to leach its way out of it, that's your time frame. So typically it's like 30 days before that starts to happen, 30 days of a window where you're getting a feeding, and then another 30 days where everything is tapering off, and that's sort of the end of the story. Now for me, I really just want 8 weeks. 8 weeks is what I was always going for with the liquids. I want to be able to go from an application on day one and end up at 56 days or whatever that comes out to. So that's the length of time that we want to get a feeding. So an every other month schedule is easy to attain. And we've done that through the addition of the carbon and the material that is in the liquid to get it there. Now, when you look at things like methylated urea or methylene urea, that's actually just a long carbon chain as well. So we're taking a little bit of a different approach to get to that same concept. So when some people are like, well, how can it be, you know, a slow release, it's not methylene urea? Well, methylene urea is just a carbon chain. So we're doing the same type of thing through a different mode of action to get us there. And I think it's really important for people to realize that you need to get an upfront feeding and then a duration style feeding behind it. So that's why people see results, they go put something out of ours and they see things turn green like immediately, but then that green just holds and holds and holds because it's a low amount of N. We're not really pushing a whole lot, and it actually just darkens up the grass and allows it to stick around. So that's the big difference. Now, when you're talking about things like nitrate, like organic nitrogen, that takes even longer. It's a microbial breakdown. So you folks out there that are using biosolids, malorganite, euactinite, any of those, ocean grow, things like that, chicken litter stuff, Carbon X. Carbon X is a great example. That has multiple stages of nitrogen. So it's got its nitrate portion that's going to take a long time through this microbial breakdown. It's got its urea portion, and it's got its ammonium sulfate portion. So there's like a triple mode of action in that particular material. So it's really good to know when you're putting stuff out what you can expect for a result. And honestly, if you've got a soil that is a pH imbalance or anything like that, where you've got a lower organic matter or tied up material, nitrogen doesn't work as well. And you can feed and feed and feed, and you'll get low rates of benefit where you're seeing some green up and then a quick fade out because the N is just not able to assimilate into the plant. And I actually see that a lot. That is what I believe I was seeing down in the valley today, is a lot of material went out. And I know guys pound lawns around here. I've seen Utah programs and they're very old school. It's 1.5 pounds starting out and they hit them hard. Well, it was cold it was cold and it was very wet, and most of that material that they put out was not any sort of controlled release material. And just the days where we had temperature fluctuations that went cold to hot to cold, volatilization like crazy. The soil wasn't in position to absorb it, and it was just lost. And so I was looking at just depleted lawns every single place I went. And you can see for yourself, I'll roll these clips a few times of just stuff I shot from my car as I was driving around. Just terrible. And we are approaching the first day of summer. We're 10 days away, so heat is about to come on. It's got to do it. It's going to be in the 80s down there, 70s up here. We've been cool. I mean, it's prime, but even looking at my neighbor's lawn, the thing is cooked. Driving around up here, there's cooked lawns all over the place. And it's just because people didn't pay attention to the moisture and the coolness and what you needed to do to compensate for that in order to have a healthy and beautiful lawn. So pay attention to the seasons, pay attention to your rainfall, understand the nitrogen you're putting out. You know, what is your soil pH? Look at my soil series, go back and take a look so that you can see, like, hey, here's where things are effective, here's your ranges. And nitrogen is very, very important. And a lot of you guys who've sent me soil samples that I've looked at, I've seen pH ranges all over the place. And you'll see sometimes I'm recommending lime, sometimes I'm recommending ammonium sulfate, but you'll always notice that when I make a pH correction first, and then I pick material that is best suited for your pH range. So when you know, send me stuff to look at, that's always what that is. But I wanted to just throw this out there because I think it's really important. And the concept that there is a super fertilizer, that there's something that is just dynamic across every single range, is also a misnomer. One of the things that I really focused on in designing the products that we have at Greene County was that I wanted to fill it with material that usually isn't applied, stuff that's missing. And it's those missing components that make the other ones work so well. So, you know, sometimes you see something and it's incredible and the result is amazing, but then maybe over the next few times you don't see it as much. Well, it's just because you fed something that was never there before. So are there better than others? Absolutely. Are there nutrients that are in better form? For sure. Can you get higher grade material? Again, absolutely. But if you are not taking the other steps to nurture your soil into position, you're still not going to have that incredible result that you might see in other places. So I want everybody to make sure that they understand, babysit your soil. Take care of it. You know, that's why there's all these humics and this carbon and this material that we're putting out there. We're babysitting that soil so that when you feed it, it can grow into a big, healthy being. So anyway, I wanted to throw that out there. Sorry, I just sort of rambled off there for 13 minutes, but there you go. Just an interesting little day, seeing things around out there, and I wanted to share it. So I will talk to you guys real soon. See ya.